The people that benefited most from tax reform of 2018 were the middle class. The corporate tax rate affected
most
everyone.
of that benefit proportionally went to the wealthy. And let's be clear, of the economic promises that he made, right, he broke most of them. He broke his promise to do 6% economic growth. He broke his promise to do an infrastructure bill. He failed to deliver that. Most of his predictions don't come true. He said if Democrats won 4 years ago, there would be a stock market crash. Of course, the stock market doing better today than it was when he was president. But he did keep his promise to cut taxes for the rich.
Could Mayor Pete soon become Senator Pete?
We don't even have the right to give up. Like, think about the stuff other people didn't give up in the face of. And then think about how things changed. And yeah, sometimes things change for the worse. And sometimes things don't change in time. But sometimes things change faster than you ever thought they would. As recently as when I was sitting in the seat of a student at an institution not that different from the Ford School, watching politicians come and give speeches, wondering if I'd ever be among them, I knew that I probably wouldn't because I was categorically disqualified from holding office where I came from because I was gay. And then I wasn't. I was gay. I wasn't disqualified.
There will soon be an opening in the United States Senate as Democratic Senator Gary Peters just announced that he will not be seeking re-election in 2026. At 66 years old, the senator from Michigan has decided that he's ready to retire, and who could blame him? Honestly, he's setting a good example, but of course, it's always the Democrats doing things like this. Peters said he's ready to spend more time with his family, and he'd like to cruise the winding roads of Michigan on his Harley. He also said that he always thought there would be a time that I would step aside. I also never saw service in Congress as something you would do your whole life. It's not supposed to be, and there are offenders on both sides of the aisle, and I'm not happy about any of them. But without congressional term limits, it takes a really strong individual to voluntarily relinquish the power, prestige, and privilege that comes along with serving our nation's Congress. So for Peters, I wish him well in his retirement. But where does that leave the people of Michigan and, by extension, our nation? Well, Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and the Secretary of Transportation in the Biden administration, has expressed interest. And you might be thinking, that guy, he doesn't live in Michigan. He does actually. He moved there with his family back in 2022. And according to the Daily Beast, the Michigan Senate race is one of the most expensive in the country. Pete Buttigieg is well known and well respected amongst both establishment and voting Democrats, and his stint in the presidential cabinet juices up his resume quite a bit. He's already got experience in Washington, and he's expected to attract a ton of money in fundraising from around the country. Now, I don't personally love that money and fundraising is such a crucial part of deciding who gets to represent the American people in government, but until things change, it's the way of things. And I know, especially for progressives, we get this. Things won't change until someone somewhere starts doing some things differently. But then there's always the risk of losing big during that transition phase while we're waiting for others to catch on and follow suit, which isn't even guaranteed to happen. For many voting and donating Americans, that's just not a risk that they can afford to take right now. And so the status quo perpetuates, and if Democrats want to get ahead, they have to continue to play the game just as Republicans do. We all watched Trump buy his way into the presidency last November. That's what we're up against. So we can stand on our laurels and principles and pretend that money in politics isn't a thing because it shouldn't be a thing, but what is and what should be are often two very, very different things. The Wall Street Journal also reported on this story, but they framed it as an omen of trouble for the Democrats in 2026. Naturally, the Democrats are hoping to shift Congress away from Republican control in the midterms, but Republicans will be reluctant, desperate even, to let that happen. Still, if the people of Michigan elected a Democratic senator once, there's a good chance they'll do it again in 2026, barring any major shift in ideology, which isn't impossible. According to Politico, the Democrats would only need to flip 3 seats in order to win back control of the House, which would normally be doable, but experts say that those would likely be seats in districts that Trump won. Representative Susie Lee of Nevada spelled it out for her Democratic colleagues, saying, "We need to listen more and then understand where people are comfortable and uncomfortable and be able to talk to that." What a concept. The Democrats are finally starting to figure out that their traditional voting base is disappointed in them. And this is a sort of conundrum I was kind of referring to earlier. In order for this to have happened, it wasn't enough that we tried to tell them directly how we were feeling. It wasn't enough for us to tweet at them and call their offices and even directly approach them at rallies and campaign events. The work we do at outlets like this one wasn't enough for them to even just take a hint that the things that they were doing and saying were not in alignment with the things American voters actually wanted them to be doing and saying. In order for this self-reflection to have even happened in the first place, in order for them to understand that they should actually try listening to people instead of arrogantly assuming that they just know what we want, or instead of treating us like we're stupid by doing things that they want to do because it makes them more money or whatever, while telling us that this is really what we want. No, in order for all of this to have happened, they had to lose elections, and they had to lose big. Democratic voters had to abstain entirely from voting, from executing their rights as Americans, to teach these elite leaders a childish lesson. And it worked, unfortunately, very much at the expense of the American people and at the expense potentially of democracy in this country. You can argue that electing Democrats into office wouldn't have done much good anyway, because they're generally a do-nothing or a do-little party. You can argue that the price of this move was just too great, that people will suffer because of it, that having a passive Congress is better than whatever we're seeing now. Or you can argue that paying this price for a year or two would be worth the reckoning that it would hopefully bring on. All solid arguments, possibly none more right or wrong than another. But the fact remains that the people who abstained from voting for Democrats last November either hurt us in the long run or did us a huge favor. Personally, I am a big believer that real change doesn't happen until things really get shaken up significantly. But I also don't like the idea of people suffering needlessly in ways that might be very difficult to come back from. But this is the timeline that we're currently on. Let's hope for a better future in 2026. I feel that 2025 is going to suck either way, but hope could be around the corner. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.